make this fairly quick, and I'm going to give you a big overview about why we should all be excited. And I think the very first way to sort of describe this is that I think that when this became an issue about what was termed the Precision Medicine Initiative, now the All of Us Research Program, the concept of allowing us to build a major platform so that literally all of us could sort of interrogate was actually incredibly exciting. And I think that the best way to sort of start that is that I think our excitement within the state, and particularly within Chicago, was really at a fever pitch when we recognized the power of developing a cohort of over 1 million people of which we could study. The Illinois Precision Medicine Consortium is made up of 3 principal sites. We have Phil Greenland, who's the PI at Northwestern, me and Martha DeViglius, who are the PIs here at UI Health, and Habib Hassan, who's at University of Chicago. But you look at that slide and you sort of say, meh, so what? But actually for me, it's a major deal that in Chicago, you could get the 3 major institutions to literally come together to work on a project that would benefit everyone, not only in Chicago, but the state, is actually a big deal. If you think back to 1994, when we had the Women's Health Initiative, interestingly enough, under Dr. Healy, it was an amazing event then to say, let's get groups together to work together. But again, it was difficult for us to see, I think, back at that time. But with this one, this initiative, this Precision Medicine Initiative, the All of Us, it was clear to us, everyone at every institution, of why we had to get together, stick together, and work together. In addition to the sort of 3 main sites, when we say that this is not just beyond the walls of Chicago or the borders of Chicago, it is. We have involved people from Peoria and other areas around the city and the state. And in fact, there are different health systems. We have public health systems, we have private, we have rural, and we have very urban underserved programs, all united really in one context to sort of really build this platform. Many of you know that this stems out of the vision that President Obama sort of proposed back in 2015 in a hopes that using this technology, this tool, and I know that, yeah, right, I heard it from everyone. There was almost a huge smile from the entire group that I could feel when you saw him. That's okay. That's okay. But when he actually saw this, he really wanted this to become the foundation whereby our future would be impacted or even revolutionized by the science that we put forward. Now, the one thing I will say is that this is one of the few projects in the United States that still has substantial bilateral support. And sometimes the nice thing about it is whether you sit on the red or the blue, we all recognize the power of building a potential cohort and a platform for which we can develop new drugs and have better understanding of all populations. We are led by our fearless leader, Eric Dishman, who I just have to say, I'll describe him in one way. He is not just a leader of a program, but he's a benefactor of precision medicine. He himself would tell you that at his young age when he had renal cell carcinoma and that there was no other sort of cures that were being sort of bantered about, that he and the universities that work with him and others found the cure for him in the context of the use of precision medicine. So he's not just some sort of administrator. He is not only a direct benefactor, but probably the living embodiment of what I think the new tools around the preciseness and the precision around medicine, what it can do. Now, I'm going to go over the big sort of picture so that everyone's on the same page. We're going to talk a little bit more detail about our rollout, the national rollout. We'll talk a little bit more about, what we're going to be doing here in Illinois. And at some point, I think we'll hopefully show you, even if it's only at the end, a minute, 30 seconds of hopefully the national campaign. That's what I'm hoping. But the cornerstone of this precision medicine, or at least all of us program, is that it's led by the NIH, and we really are trying to get more than 1 million participants. That reflects the diversity across the United States, and that actually has opportunities for the people who participate to provide not only data, but to sort of do so on an ongoing basis, and that the data, interestingly enough, would be shared freely and rapidly. I think that by participating in the All of Us sort of program, it'll do several things. The first is it'll allow us, obviously, a chance to learn about our own health, but about others, given our data. There'll be an opportunity to sort of develop, I think, new sort of strategies in fighting disease, obviously, and that it ensures that our community be included. And that is all of the communities, and we say all of the communities, we're talking about those traditionally underrepresented in biomedical research as well. And when we say that this is a science sort of project, it's not. It's really a movement, an ability to sort of move us as a country to understand that by us giving, we actually build great sort of platforms. We then give not only to our neighbors and to our sons and daughters, but to the next generation after. Now, that's a little bit of a cultural change, but it's one that I think we need when we recognize that as we look at our future, we can't rely just on the 500 samples and the 1,000 cohorts, or even the 10 or 20,000 cohorts. That if we're really going to make big impact, particularly not on just some, but for all, we're going to need to go big, and I think that this is an audacious effort to sort of do so. Now, the traditional way of thinking is we just talked about. A scientist or academic comes up with an ideal, we sort of develop a cohort, and we answer questions. This is a little bit different. What would you do as a scientist, or even as a citizen scientist, if you had access to over a couple million data points of humans? What would you do if you were able to, on an ongoing basis, be able to have access to not only this platform, but as the platform continues to build and grow, imagine the questions that you might be able to ask. I think that's the hope, really, of the Precision Medicine Initiative for all of us, is that we'll be able to do that. I think that they are going about it, and the diversity is really meaningful, and it's a cornerstone of what they're trying to do and what we're trying to do. They're thinking that not only are we going to get the reflection of diversity among people, but also health statuses. This is one of these things where traditional sort of studies where I'm going to go after renal cell carcinoma, therefore I'm going to get a cohort of people with renal carcinoma, and that's all I care about. This program allows not only for whether you have renal cell or diabetes, but it also allows for you to be healthy, or even to have spina bifida. There are no rules on who could participate, because when it says all of us, it really does mean all of us. Imagine being able to get this and in some of our hopes and our dreams where it's wildly successful. And I want to start looking at a small number of people with sarcoid. Usually we're having to patch those things together. Imagine if they were already there. That's the hope. There's also going to be diversity in the context of geography and also the data types that are collected. We will definitely share data with both researchers and participants. The participants will also have access to their study information, which I think is a good thing. I think as we move from the age of oil being the most powerful to the age of data being the most powerful and a driving force, that I think that this is, at the end of the day, a good thing and will happen anyways, independent of us. I think where we talk about data, we also have to be aware of privacy and security and adhere to the highest standards. That is not lost on the people with the All of Us program, and we are hard at work at trying to figure out how to do exactly that. I also think it has the potential of leveling the playing field for diverse researchers, so that it's not only if you have the best data sets, at a tier 1 Carnegie Research Center, but you can be down the block at Malcolm X and have a reasonable question and still have access to data and access to asking a question. Not only does that feel egalitarian, but I think it's actually necessary, because I do think at today's, or at least currently, that not all the appropriate questions are being asked because not all the people who could ask those questions are at the table equally. As we talk about some of the programs, there'll be program data, and I'll go through this for the sake of time. There's going to be a couple different methods of sort of engagement. One's called the healthcare provider organizations, very much like us, Northwestern and University of Chicago. And there'll be a program called the VEC Volunteers. As we look at the four sort of pillars of the infrastructure for the All of Us program, it involves data and research centers, biobanks, healthcare provider organizations, and participant technology centers. You're going to hear a little bit more about some of this a little bit later from Dr. Denny, but we can just let you know that this is really a multi-pronged, big, massive sort of effort that enables this university to be a piece of something that I think is huge. The biobank to date is going to be, and we're working with Mayo Clinic to do that. And the participant technology, again, is led by groups that are really thinking about security and other things like that. But I want to get to the good stuff. So again, I'm giving you basic blocking and tackling because I think it's necessary for you to actually have the big picture about what it is that we're trying to do. So we've talked about our regional medical centers, which are, the University of Illinois, University of Chicago, et cetera, but we've also involved to bring more voices to the table, federally qualified health centers, which I absolutely believe in. Many of you know that we also at the university are affiliated, not only affiliated, but we're one of the first in the country to sort of own and operate our own federally qualified health center called Miles Square. Well, that's a significant advantage for us because these federally qualified health centers are usually established in areas where you have some of the most underserved populations, some of the most difficult to sort of reach. So when we say all of us, we really mean that we are trying to actually see all of us and build a platform that's diverse. The other thing is we also have included in this program Veteran Affairs in the VA, which has been a great, I think, partner. We started off with 4. We were the first 4 to be picked. We were the Illinois Precision Medicine Consortium. We went along with Pittsburgh, University of Arizona, and the partnership between Columbia Cornell and Harlem Hospital. So we were, as you would call it these days, one of the early adapters. Since that time, things have actually grown a little bit. We've added federally qualified health centers, not only the VA, but the map looks a little bit like this now. And so we have several more regional medical centers, a handful more of federally qualified health centers in the VA. But why is this important for me? Again, as a basic scientist who, I really like protein methylation because it not only makes me happy, I think it's important. It's a good area of research, and if there's any young people really interested in doing some research, I tell you protein methylation is where it's going to be at. But beyond that, it turns out that at a place like UIC, it's woven into our DNA that the science shouldn't just help some, it should help all. I think when we look at this program, it has potential. Let me just for a second show you this slide that many of you in this room have seen, and on your right, you'll see a number there in the loop. And the loop, as most of you know, is only 3-4 miles away. Loop, the life expectancy there is 85. Interestingly enough, where we're centered, if you then look to, in this case, your left, you'd see West Garfield Park, and that's 69, and that's rounded up. There's a substantial difference in life expectancy there. So why would I actually want to participate in this program? And I believe that this program, of all the programs, has the potential of affecting essentially West Garfield Park. Simply put, because as we look at minorities in clinical trials, we know that while African Americans, for example, make up 15%, less than 5% are participating. The numbers are even lower as you look at other groups in the context of their participation in science projects. So the thing that keeps me awake at night isn't the fact that we're not going to have technology that's going to be able to have impact. It isn't that immunotherapy isn't going to have a major impact. It isn't that molecular biology and the molecular sort of approaches to precision medicine aren't going to be helpful. The thing that keeps me awake at night in a cold sweat, as James Brown would say, is that with all of this, we have the potential of increasing the life expectancy in the loop to 90 and actually having the West Garfield parks and those like it to either stay the same or in this current political environment, even go backwards. In a context where we have a university that says that it was built by Lincoln, and Lincoln famously said that this was built not to be a public university, but to be the public's university, we, and every academic, I think, institution has the obligation to say, how will these new tools impact favorably, not some of us, but all of us? I think this program actually has a major component of making sure that as we answer new questions, that we're also paying attention to those who are underrepresented in biomedical research, which is why I'm participating. I started off this conversation, this is just to illustrate the point, I started off this conversation with Eric Dishman, our fearless leader, who is a champion of precision medicine, only to tell you that most of the folks here in Chicago may or may not know that if you heard things like Kanye West, I know that sometimes when you're shopping, that name probably comes up and associated with Kardashian, that guy. Folks like Common and others, very famous people, this guy was associated with being the backdrop of making their music. I put him up there because he too actually had renal cell carcinoma. But what he didn't have access to was precision medicine or any of the newer technologies that we're having. And so a very talented national and international sort of DJ Timbuktu, we've been now working with this family to make sure that we are bringing about the attention of the gene editing and immunotherapy and precision medicine, not just to the typical sort of folk like us who would hear this, but how do we get this out to young people and how do we get this out to underserved communities? They have volunteered their time in participating with us in trying to deliver that message. I say that because there are the other omics that are missing. And what do I really love about the potential possibilities of the precision medicine movement or the All of Us movement is that we're going to start off with basic measures that you'll hear about. But once we've built the cohort and once we've built this massive platform, we have the potential of asking the other omics. Now I always say the missing omics. The missing omics that are usually involved with the social determinants of health. Now I know this is a different sort of talk, and we are definitely excited about the fact that the butterfly phone came out and you can get it for $2,000, and on your cell phone you can do your own ultrasounds. And we point to the technology as we sort of say to the future, but I'm reminded that the technology that we are so proud to say with your phone, and I can have you hold up your entire phones, everybody can take it out and they can show me their apps, but we can go 3 miles over to West Garfield Park and have the same people pull out their phones. Their phones not only won't have your apps, their phones won't even support your apps. Their phones sometimes are limited in the context of even texting or even the amount of minutes that they have on their phone. So the hardware alone is really not going to be the only answer. It's not just technology, it's technology and what we do. And the promise of the All of Us movement is that it's now going to sort of say the promise of technology is not only where we're going to create it and new knowledge, but we're going to implement it into communities. The crazy part about it is that I honestly believe that the technologies of tomorrow and being able to do predictive measures and all these things are going to happen. The future is here. We don't have to think about the future. The future is here. An issue is that it's unevenly distributed. And one of the jobs that I believe that the precision medicine movement that you won't get to hear a lot about because, again, we are all focused on the science because, believe me, the science and the potential of what could come out of this program, I believe, is awesome. But we have to be reminded that the missing omics actually also play a role. So I'll end with this. let's just say, for the sake of argument, we have two sisters. If you really believe in the fact that genetically they're probably similar, they're raised in the same town, they're raised in the same home by the same parents, under the same similar circumstances, and as all kids, and these guys are cute, they grow up and they move away. They develop their own lives. One of the sister winds up in the Gold Coast. Now, that was where the loop is 85, to make it just easy for you. She has access to fresh foods. Areas around violence and stress are fairly low, and as we talk about violence and stress, yes, it is a real thing for us, not only in Chicago, but places like Boston and other places as well. And the income is fairly high. The other sister actually chooses another path. She goes to Moline, and some of you have been there, so you know of which I talk. Moline, on the other hand, is fairly poor income. The availability of food, they have food, but as what I would call it, it's not so much food desert as it is a toxic swamp of available foods. And there are really a lack of health resources. So the question would be that if they both develop breast cancer, will they respond to the same therapy? Now, if you really believe in the microbiome, and if you really believe in epigenetics, one can make a strong argument that even though they're the same, similar, they may respond differently. In fact, maybe not just because they're genes, but because of their zip code. So the power, I think, what we have of science in the future is the ability to not only take a tumor sample and see if someone responds or not, but to see if someone responds or not only based on genetics, but the other missing omics in the context of their environment. Wouldn't it be wonderful if it turns out that an African-American woman that we say responds or doesn't respond to therapy in West Garfield Park, and now we sort of say, well, it must be because she's African-American. What if one day we were able to sort of say, well, if we had the other omics included, turns out that it's your environment. And whether you took someone from the loop and you put them with the same foods and the same violence and things like that, they too would have a particular response to a therapy. We are literally in the 21st century, I think, blessed on the verge of doing something even bigger than any and all of us think about in this room. I think the combination of what I'm going to call high tech, and for reasonable purposes, low tech, although it's not all that low tech, of combining the concerns of the environment, whether it's microbiome or epigenetic data, big data, combining that with our technologies, I think we're going to be able to do amazing things. But I know that in some ways we're a little limited. Right now, it turns out that big data gets bigger and gets bigger and gets bigger every year. But what type of conversations do we have with those data points in the context of talking to one of the guys even in our ward or in a district? What do we tell the community hospital about the health of their community? I think we are on the verge of doing something amazing. Not just building a cohort, but building a mindset that big data should also be functional data, and not just for some, but for all of us. I think that's the hope of the program. It's certainly my driving force of participating in the All of Us program is the identity and the identification of bringing the implementation of what we're trying to do to the communities and bringing big data and other sort of technologies and sort of approaches to the table so that we can really connect the pieces so that 10 years, 20 years from now, we don't say, we've done a great job in really understanding things, and my God, can you look at the loop? We succeeded. It's not only 90, it's like 97 now. And then 3 miles down the road, looking at the West Garfield Park and saying, oh yeah, well, I think the big promise is how do we actually get all this wonderful stuff we're doing literally out to everybody? And so with that, I will end, and with 40 seconds to spare to get us on time. So thank you, guys.
We are one nation, one people, When called upon to give from within, we come together and find that our capacity to help others is limitless. Here, we are fearless. What lies inside all of us is more than data. It's life. It's more than insight and medical research. It's vision and honor and compassion. What's flowing through America's veins is its diversity. The next great breakthrough will be found in each and every one of us. And what we find there will unlock mysteries, heal the sick, and eradicate disease. We ask for 1 million individuals to come forward and stand on this landmark in history. We ask America to do, once again, what she has always done. Lead the way forward. We're one nation, one people, but all of us are different. And it's those very differences that will lead to answers for generations to come.
If that doesn't pump you up, I don't know what will, because listen, I really do think from sea to shining sea that we have an opportunity to lead not only the country but the world in how to do science and how to do it in a 21st century approach, and I'm proud to be a part of that.